Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 73 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue talking with you guys about personal finance topics that I think could be really useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the decision to buy new or to buy used when it comes to purchasing a vehicle that is new to you. And this is something that is not lost on me, that a lot of people go and they're at the dealership and they see these new bright shiny cars that are out front, and they see the warming seats and the perfectly clean interior and the leather and the nice tires and the rims and the car's all nice and shiny, and they forget that there's basically the same thing towards the back of the lot that's just 1 or 2 years old that may be a lot cheaper. So today we're going to talk about that decision, what goes into it, and how we should purchase vehicles. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below. If you are listening to this on Apple or Spotify podcasts, make sure that you subscribe to my channel on each one of those platforms and leave me a review. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And if you are interested in financial coaching, if you are interested in working one-on-one with me to build a financial plan that works best for you, go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com, and click on the Work with Dylan tab and pick the financial coaching session type that would work best for you. So, new or used, what's a better idea? Well, I'm not really going to beat around the bush here. I'm going to give you the straight answer and exactly what you should know when it comes to this thought process. You will be best served by buying slightly used cars in cash. And you may say, well, that just put a damper on everything I do in my life. I buy brand new cars and I finance them. What's so wrong with the way that I'm doing things? Well, we're going to get into that. But in the long term, what's going to serve you the best and what's going to be the least costly to you is going to be buying things in cash, not financing them, not incurring that interest, and buying these things that are slightly used. Therefore, some of the depreciation has come off of them, and we will jump into that as well. I mean, the choice between a new and a used vehicle could be the difference between living a life of financial freedom and living a life where you are struggling financially and just having to make endless payments. And if that new car smell has you intoxicated, and if you feel like that's the only way that you can buy cars and that's the only way you can get what you want and something that is good and reliable, which we will also talk about, then the only way to cure that is to get down to the cold hard numbers. So let's get right down to it. So the very first argument is reliability. One of the biggest arguments for buying a new car is, oh, we need something that is safe and reliable and something that we don't have to worry about that will leave us on the side of the road and that will last us longer. Because they think used cars won't last very long and that you're driving those for 5 minutes and they'll have you on the side of the road, which is not the case. And you can find like new used cars that are perfectly safe and perfectly reliable and dependable. They'll just be at a much cheaper price. In fact, some of you would be interested to know that new cars can at times be some of the least reliable cars to drive. And the reason for that is that nobody's driven them yet. There can be faulty air conditioning systems. There can be faulty belts and pipes and all these different types of things that can cause you to spend a lot of money at the repair shop that was not absolutely necessary in the first place. And so that fact should also lead you to go, well, let me drive something that somebody else has already driven and that hasn't clunked out on the side of the road for them. And maybe that's a better bet than something that nobody has ever driven for any extended period of time. So just keep in mind that new does not equal safe. It all depends on the type of car, how long it's been on the road, the type of wear and tear that it has had. And you can find used cars that are perfectly safe and dependable, but a lot of people are just too caught up in the allure of the new vehicle. Now, I said we were going to jump into some numbers. Well, here they are. We are going to talk about depreciation. New cars depreciate. Now, all cars depreciate, but new cars really depreciate. And that's going to be part of my argument against new cars, is the fact that they depreciate so quickly. And the truth is, whether you have a boat or a lawnmower or anything with an engine and wheels, it is going to go down in value. These are not appreciating assets. They wear out. They are depreciating assets. So you never want to have too much money tied up in any of them. So depending on how good of a make and model of a car that you have will impact how much the car depreciates and how quickly it depreciates, but they will all depreciate. And undoubtedly, the new ones are going to depreciate much, much faster than the used ones. So how fast do cars actually depreciate? Well, let's look at it. Let's say after 1 minute of owning a new car. Now, I say 1 minute, as soon as you drive it off the lot, as soon as you sign those papers and drive it out, how fast do they depreciate? Well, let's say you buy a $35,000 new car. It's going to lose between 9 and 11% of its value as soon as you drive it off the lot. That's throwing $3,500 right down the drain. That's crazy. That's a ton of depreciation right off the top. And not only is that a ton of depreciation, if you were to have financed that vehicle, then you're immediately upside down. You're immediately not going to be able to sell that car and get that value back. That value is gone for the time being. You're going to have to work the loan balance down below the value of the vehicle, which the value of the vehicle is going to continue to drop before you can sell the car for any type of gain or for any type of profit for you. So that is just after 1 minute. Now let's say after 1 year, you buy a new car, fast forward 12 months. You're 12 months ahead. Now what? Now what does it look like as far as the depreciation? Now, that car that's sitting in your driveway will have lost about 20% or maybe even more from the day that you bought it. So a lot of that initial depreciation was on that just driving it off the lot. But then you've got a whole nother about 10% or more, depending on how much you have worn it down over the course of that year between the time that you drove it off the lot and 1 year later. So 1 year later, you're looking at a car that's only worth 80% of what you bought it for, if you've even taken care of it. And then let's say after 5 years. So we've looked at, as soon as you drive it off the lot, we've looked at after 1 year. Well, what about after 5 years? Well, after 5 years, your car will have lost approximately 60% of its original value, which is a ton. That your car is going to be worth less than half of what it was just 5 short years earlier. And obviously that again depends on how you've taken care of it, how it has held up. But most cars from there on lose about 10% of their value each year as they continue to step down, which, before you know it, your car is worth very, very little. And there's nothing bad about your car not being worth much once you've driven it for 10 years. You've gotten a lot of use, a lot of utility out of it. But the problem comes with this. The problem comes with how much longer could you actually drive a new car versus a 1 or 2 year old car? Not much longer. Yet, when you purchase that new car, you're going to incur that initial drop, that initial decline in value. So like we said, in a year, it'll lose about 20% approximately of its value. Well, that means if you buy a 1 year old car, you should be able to buy it for about 80% of what it was originally worth. So that individual who's going to drive their car and drive it, let's say they drive it for 10 years, but you only drive that used car for 9 years. Okay, so one drives 10, one drives 9 years, but that extra year that you didn't drive the car, you saved yourself so much money in the fact that you had that 20% of depreciation that you didn't have to pay for by buying the used car. And that could be more beneficial to you than that extra year of buying the new car. So just think about it. You could be patient. You could wait a year or two and let somebody else take the depreciation hit. Let somebody else take the depreciation of the new car and pay for that. And then you can come in and buy a good as new. In most cases, there are a ton of good as new used cars. You can go buy a good as new used car and probably get a good deal on it as well, because they're probably going to be more flexible on price with used cars. And you can go and purchase this used car and pay less than the individual who would have bought the new car and still drive it for a long time, an extended period of time, and they're not likely to just clunk out on you on the side of the road unless you just bought a crappy car, which does happen from time to time as well. But let me be very, very clear. No matter if you're buying new or buying used, you cannot be putting these things on payments. I've talked about this before, why car payments are dumb. We cannot put things that go down in value on payments. Doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to dive into that here. I'm not going to preach at you too much, but do not finance new cars. Not smart. So let's just look at how this works out in real life. Let's look at an actual situation, something that has actually happened, something that is on average occurring. So let's say you have two individuals, one who's going to save up and buy a good used car with cash, and the other one who goes the normal route and they finance a new car. Okay. So the average new car loan in the United States is $31,722 with monthly payments of approximately $550. Okay. And the average term of the loan is about 70 to 72 months. Okay. So that's almost 6 years of $545 car payments, which is crazy. And we can get into how that $545 car payment can be so much more if it was invested and all these types of things. I've talked about this in previous episodes. You can go watch those there. I'll put the links above. So what we know here based on those payments is that individual who has financed the car will have paid $37,605 in car payments. Okay. And that was to something that was initially worth less than $32,000. So over $6,000 there, or approximately $6,000 there in interest that was paid. And it's now worth about $10,000 if they're lucky 6 years later at the end of the loan. So meanwhile, that individual who was buying the used car, the good, reliable used car, decided to go with a low mileage sedan, right? And they bought that in cash for $12,000. Now, you may say, how in the world are you buying a used sedan for $12,000? How in the world does that occur? Well, let me just tell you, I own a Toyota Camry. We financed that for somewhere around $11,500 when they financed. I've talked before about how that car was financed by my parents, and then the car payments were given to me, and I immediately got that thing paid off. Okay, so that was financed at about $11,500. Okay, and it was a used. It was 3 years old, had about 60,000 miles on it, but in great shape. Toyota Camry, great car, right? And so that was financed for about $11,500, purchased for about $11,500, right? I paid it off extremely quickly once those payments were given to me because I did not want to make payments, right? So we see that this is not a joke. This is the real deal. This is something that can actually occur. You can actually go buy a $12,000 used car that is like new, that is very, very good shape. So, what could that individual do with the extra $545 a month that they had that the other one doesn't have? Well, they can give it, they can spend it, or they can save and invest it. We've talked about that, the uses of money. And that is going to be so useful to them over the long term, way more useful than paying that $545 car payment over the life of that loan. And if they wanted to upgrade to a $20,000 car, then what they could do is just save that $545 for 3 years, and they would be to a point where they could buy a $20,000 car in cash, when the other individual who has financed the $32,000 car is only going to be about halfway through their loan. And so at that point, that $20,000 car that they were going to buy is probably going to be worth more than the individual who financed the $32,000 car at that point. That's crazy. That's why we don't want to buy new cars if we can help it. We want to buy good, useful, used cars. And like I said, there's always room to invest a lot when it comes to not paying a car payment. I said we can give, save, and spend. You 100% can. But the common decision there is, to invest otherwise. And that should be the decision that is made, because there is a cost to purchasing a vehicle. There's an interest rate. But instead, we could be growing our money at this other rate of growth, this rate of interest, rate of return on our investments. Well, I've talked before about how you shouldn't own things with motors in them that is worth more than half of your annual income, or else it's really going to tear down your ability to build wealth and your ability to keep a looser budget and have more financial freedom, more options with your money. There are many guidelines that you can use as to when you can purchase a new car. My guideline would be, and this is something that each person would look at and go, what is the best for them? If you can look and you can go, I'm on track with my retirement savings, I'm going to buy the car in cash, that is not going to put me in a cash light position. I have an emergency fund saved, obviously. I'm out of debt, obviously. I'm moving in the right direction and I have adequate things going on, and this is not going to eat into my ability to be financially successful. Then, yes, by all means, buy a new car, but buy it in cash. Do not buy it on payments, obviously. And then if you want to know what millionaires do, you want to know what actually happens with millionaires. Well, Chris Hogan wrote Everyday Millionaires, and in his book, Everyday Millionaires, they asked these 10,000 millionaires what kind of cars they drive, and they found out that the average millionaire drives a 4-year-old car with 41,000 miles on it. That doesn't sound like a brand new car to me. And then 8 out of 10 millionaires drive cars that they drive away debt-free with. They don't take out car payments. 8 out of 10, 80% of these millionaires do not take car payments. So neither should you. And my biggest gripe against the new car, obviously, is that people finance it. It's not as much that it is costly, although it is costly. It's not as much that they're just as reliable as like new used cars, or maybe less reliable than those cars. It is simply that it is costly to finance something, and it's dumb to be putting something that goes down in value on payments. So you should not be doing that. You should be purchasing things with cash. And if you can't purchase a new car with cash, then you shouldn't be buying a new car. Like I said just a moment ago, you need to have things really in line before you ever decide to buy a new car. And not only that, maybe you need to change the way you look at cars in general. Maybe you need to change the way that you look at vehicles, because vehicles should not be status symbols. These are things that are decreasing in value every single day. Why do we look at things that are going down in value and go, oh, that's the sign. That's the sign that somebody's got a lot of money. Well, not necessarily. And like I just said a moment ago, a lot of individuals are out there financing things they can't really afford, or they're financing things that are nice, but they're making payments on them when there are people who are buying things in cash that they can afford, that they actually own and not the bank. And those individuals are being looked at like, that's just a normal car. What's the big deal? The big deal is those people are not in debt. Those people are not struggling to make payments. And those people actually own their assets and don't let their assets own them. And so one last thing that I want to hit on before we wrap it all up today is that buying used will actually save you on car insurance, believe it or not. So that is another way that you will save with buying used. A lot of people forget this particular factor. They forget to factor this in because they may think that it's just the difference in the prices of the vehicle and the prices of financing the cars or whatever it may be. No, it is also the fact that you will pay less in other places. The average new car driver in the United States is paying approximately $1,650 per year in insurance payments. So if you look at the 6 month, that's about $825 on car insurance. But if they were buying a used car, they could save about 12% per year on their premiums. And 12% of that value, that's pushing $200 a year that you could be putting in your pocket that you didn't have to be paying out in the form of car insurance payments. Now, let me be abundantly clear. I like cars. I don't get me wrong. I'll drive by nice trucks and I'll say that's a sweet truck, or I'll see a really nice sports car or something and I'm like, man, that's awesome. But at the same time, my mathematical brain, my finance brain, doesn't let me look past the fact that most individuals, first of all, who are out there buying nice cars, are financing these nice cars. And I know that I don't want to be in a place where I'm financing vehicles. Perfectly fine. I'm not worried about what other people are doing. We're not trying to keep up with the Joneses. We're trying to live our own life and live our own way towards financial freedom. Now, so that doesn't worry me too much because I understand that, financing, I'm not trying to do it. But I even look a little further and I go, well, they're paying for all of this decline in value that the next owner of that vehicle will never have to even see. The next owner of that vehicle will never have to know that there was this decline in value that was taken on by this vehicle. All they see is a reasonably priced used vehicle that they can go and purchase and be, just thrilled with. And to kind of go along with the financing idea and the idea that, most of these people finance these new cars, a lot of people end up upside down on their new cars. And then they want to trade in for a new car, within a couple of years. And then they're going to remain upside down and roll in negative equity and blah, 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 blah. All these different things that are getting you nowhere financially. All these different things that are just pushing your net worth down. They're just pushing your ability to build wealth down. New cars, yeah, they look good. Yeah, they're fancy, they're nice, but we have been wired to think that it matters. We have been conditioned to think, from our culture, to think that a new car matters. We've been conditioned to think that we need a new car. We've been conditioned to think that, when our car needs any kind of maintenance or repair, that, oh, well, it's time to get something new. No, cars can continue going. You just have to take care of them. You have to do the right things with them. You have to do the proper maintenance, the proper repairs from time to time that get you to where you need to be. But they're just a tool. Cars are just a tool to get you from point A to point B. So if you're out there financing new cars, I need you to stop immediately. If you're out there financing used cars, I need you to stop immediately. I need you to buy useful used cars, like new used cars, in cash up front. And if you can't buy in cash and up front, then you're going to have to decrease your standards until you can. But then you can move up so much quicker than the individuals who buy new cars. So hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you could, go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments if you haven't done so already. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, then subscribe there and leave me a review. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And if you want to work one-on-one with me in financial coaching and go through financial coaching sessions to get your financial life on track, then we can definitely do that. Go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab and pick the financial coaching session that would work best for you and sign up there. So tune in tomorrow as we talk about controlling the controllables in your personal financial life and being able to realize that there are things that we are in control of and things that we're not in control of. And we have to realize that we can only control what we can, but we need to make sure that we are doing so. So thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Money's No Object. I am your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.